What's up, guys? I wanted to jump on here and talk about my experience with the Standard. So for those of you who don't know, Rogue Fitness has teamed up with the Big Fish Foundation, and they are running a challenge called the Standard, which requires you to row max meters on a Concept 2 rower in 24 hours. Now, you can do this in teams of 1 up to 4, and I chose to do it solo here in the barn earlier this week. So the reason that this became a 24-hour row is because a group of guys, including Tosh, who runs the Big Fish Foundation, rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. There's a video of that on roguefitness.com or their YouTube channel called The Standard. You should check it out. It's awesome. They rowed across the ocean, and in order to prepare for that, they did a workout where you rowed 10K every hour on the hour until you basically couldn't make 10K in the hour. So as far as I understand, that's kind of where the origins of this 24-hour row come from. And the Big Fish Foundation is where part of the proceeds go when you register for this event. It's part of the reason that you're doing it, to raise awareness for this event and for veterans. It's an organization that helps out veterans transition from military life into civilian life. And really, it's to help veterans effectively manage post-traumatic stress that comes from being in the military and being in combat, and to help prevent veteran suicide. So because of all that, I was jones to jump in the competition and kind of see how I could handle the 24 hours. Now, when I set out, my goals were to reach 200K and to not sleep within the 24 hours. Now, you're allowed to get up and get off the rower and do whatever you want at any point during that 24 hours. You just only have that window in order to get as many meters as possible. Now, one of the biggest things or concerns that I had was, what was I gonna eat, how much was I gonna drink, and what kind of supplements was I gonna use in order to keep me going for the full 24 hours. And so if you're gonna tackle this event or any other endurance event, the one thing I would recommend is that you only eat the same way that you would typically eat throughout a day, right? So I pretty much ate the exact same breakfast, lunch, and dinner that I normally would. My dinner changed a little bit because by rowing that long, my stomach was a little off, I want to say, and so I just ate like another sandwich, which is what I had for lunch. I had like a lunch meat sandwich, and then breakfast I had an egg sandwich. I had a little bit of bacon in there, I think, and English muffin, just the standard stuff that I pretty much eat every morning. And the reason you want to do it this way is because you don't want to throw something into your system that's going to upset your stomach, something it doesn't recognize, something new that might cause you some kind of distress. That's definitely not what you want when you're gearing up to row for 24 hours. So if you're like me, sometimes your stomach will get upset when doing an endurance event. This happened for me the first time that I tried cross country. Whenever I would go on a really long run, I would have some stomach issues and needed to find a way to solve that. And bananas were my solution. I've used these things pretty much every time now. If I ever get any kind of stomach sickness, anything like that, and I feel like I can eat or hold something down, bananas are my go-to. It seems to settle my stomach a little bit, keep things where I want to keep them for the duration. So I was eating one of these probably every hour and a half to 2 hours, just to keep, again, my stomach settled. You're drinking a lot of fluids, you're drinking a lot of liquids. This tends to thicken things up a little bit, and I would not do this event without some kind of banana or something to that effect that keeps your stomach at ease. On top of that, I always had a Camelback available with about 1 scoop of Phormula-1 and about 1 scoop of Ignition in there. So I was always getting some kind of sustenance in me when I took a sip from that. Protein, again, to just kind of help the muscles recover and keep feeding the machine. And same with just simple carbohydrates. Very easily digestible, both of these are. And so it's a rapid absorption, gets right into your bloodstream, and it's what you want when basically, or what I wanted when I wasn't going to really stop moving a whole lot for a full 24 hours. Wanted to always have a little bit of protein and just some simple carbs in a fluid mixture on hand. Now, there were 2 other things that I had with me for sustenance and quick supplementation. One was this Power Pro Bar. This has a bunch of all natural ingredients. I talk about it on here all the time, but this was one of my go-tos anytime that I just needed or felt like I needed a quick snack. I didn't feel like drinking anything anymore, and I wanted something solid outside of a banana. This was one of my go-tos. So I kept my vitamin schedule the same too. I took a microfactor in the morning, and then 16 hours later, I took another one just to kind of stay on top of keeping those nutrients in my body with all of that constant movement. So the other thing that I would show you, but I ate them all, is gummy bears. I had a couple packets of those on hand at all times just to pop something in my mouth, again, giving you that quick sugar, that quick burst of energy, something that would dissolve in my mouth, be really simple, didn't have to like eat it and put something else in my stomach. I could just kind of chew on one of those as I was rowing, and it also took just kind of the boredom out of all of the other maybe food that I was eating or the water that I was drinking. That's a great segue into hydration. How did I hydrate? I would always just constantly kind of sip on just regular water. I didn't add a whole lot of electrolyte, and there's two reasons for that. One, in the barn, it was probably between 29 degrees and 34 degrees in here for the first 16 to 18 hours. It was after that that I really decided to turn on the heat a little bit, and it got up to about between 40 to 44. So I really wasn't sweating a whole lot. I wasn't losing a lot of liquid in that way. Certainly, if it was way hotter in here, if I was doing it in the middle of the summer, I would probably include some of that, because when you sweat, obviously you lose a lot of those electrolytes and you want to replace those. But I didn't find that as necessary for the conditions that I was doing it in. So I did have bananas that had potassium in them, right? Some of the foods I ate had a bunch of salt in it, so I was getting that from my food. Didn't necessarily feel like I needed an electrolyte packet for my conditions that I was performing this event in. The other reason I didn't use one is because I have a tendency, or I have in the past, I've overdone it on the electrolytes, right? And it can actually make me feel worse and can give me stomach issues. So I decided to just stay away from that, knowing the temperatures that I was going to be rowing at, and really the pace that I was going to be rowing at was very slow. So I didn't really focus so much on the electrolyte side of things. I knew I was going to get a lot of what I needed from that, just from my food and some of the other things that I was eating, including that microfactor pack, some of the bars, right? Some of those things were going to help keep me topped off on what I needed. If you are going to do a long endurance test that involves a lot of heat, I would recommend you go get some kind of sweat test done, get some kind of analyzation done. You can look this up on the internet, where you can see pretty much how much you're losing per whatever time interval, and know about when you need to replace those in order to keep your body in an optimal condition. Next thing we're going to talk about is the grip on the paddle. So one of my concerns was how my hands were going to hold up while rowing for that long. Again, kind of my goal was to stay slow and steady and just continue to move the entire time without taking any big breaks or naps. That meant my hands were always going to be on this paddle. So I actually didn't tape up at all. I didn't tear, I didn't rip. My hands got red, they got swollen, they got a little sore, but that's just going to happen for doing an event like this. Now, there were three different ways that I gripped the paddle. One was I pretty much kept it all the way in my palm. So I would wrap my entire palm, entire hand kind of around and focus a little bit on turning my hand over, so more of my palm hit kind of the anchor point, or really where all the force was going to be put on my hand. The second one was I kind of dropped back and let it sit in my fingers, right? So a little bit more just in the middle of the finger there. And the third one, I would actually grab with my thumb and my fingertips. And this would allow me, again, to distribute the load kind of there. I'm not pulling very hard. I'm not pulling very fast. So I don't need to have like a death grip on the rower handle. And that enabled me to constantly switch between those three grips. And I never had a problem with my hand. Now, the second biggest thing I was concerned about was the seat. And I actually had a seat pad that I put on the rower seat. There's a specific one. They sell it at roguefitness.com. That is just a nice little cushion. It's probably, I don't know, a little under ½ an inch thick, right? And it just provides a little bit of comfort there for you to sit on. On top of that, I had a pair of padded cycling shorts that give you a little bit of extra padding where you want it and where you're gonna need it for that repetitive movement and all the time that you're gonna be spending sitting on that seat. Now, I did just those two things for about 16 hours, and then the last 8, I had a pillow underneath me, which actually didn't feel like it helped a lot introducing it there at the end. If that's something you think you might need, I would introduce it right at the beginning and start using it right from there. By the time I was 16 hours in, pretty much the damage was already done, and I was just kind of stuck with whatever pain that I was dealing with down on the glutes. And by far the worst time for the whole workout, the place where the mental grind really begins, at least for me, was around that 15-hour mark to right around the 20 to 21-hour mark. Those were the toughest hours for me while I was in here. I was super blessed because my wife came out, obviously, to bring me some food. She was my support crew, so that was awesome. But Then when I was in here alone in those early morning hours and late evening hours, that was probably the hardest time. I pretty much put my hood up, played some white noise on Pandora, and shut my eyes and just row. I'm not sure, I might have almost fell asleep there a few times and kind of tipped to the side, had to catch myself. But those are definitely going to be the toughest hours if you choose to do this challenge. So at the end of the day, I wound up with 182,033 meters. Just took one too many breaks, I think, in order to allow myself the opportunity to get that 200K. So next time, and I don't know when there will be a next time, I will probably prepare a little better. I have the knowledge a little bit more for what kind of pace and how many breaks I should probably take. After the workout was over, or after the challenge was over, the biggest thing that I had a pain with was obviously my hamstrings and my glutes. It was very hard to bend over at the waist. I was incredibly tight down there outside of just having fatigue from being tired. My whole upper body was pretty sore, but honestly, within about 24 hours, I started to feel a lot better. Within the first day after doing it, I really had a hard time just getting down into the bottom of a squat comfortably and doing anything like that. I definitely didn't move a barbell that day, but then the next day after, I was actually able to squat fairly normal, so the damage wasn't nearly as bad as I had expected from something like that, which also probably means I should have just went harder. Go ahead and throw any questions you have about the standard down below. I've got all of the products, supplements, anything that I listed earlier that I use to help me make it through this challenge that I found valuable down in the description below as well. And we will see you guys next time.